Hi there, you're listening to More Than Potential. I'm your host, Faith. I want to talk about K-pop stans because I'm seeing a lot of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram posts, Twitter posts saying that K-pop stans are the weakest links in the Black community. Well, at least next to Black men who date white women. Now, I'm not sure what K-pop stans did to get to that low of a ranking, but I have to defend us because I think what's happening is Black Twitter is taking things out of context and ruining something that they don't fully understand. And I'm just going to be honest, this is coming from someone who has listened to K-pop music before. I've listened to K-pop, I watch anime, this, that, and the third. And so I'm going to give you my opinion based upon what I have noticed. Be prepared for this to be a little bit more controversial, but I just have to reflect on why I'm seeing so much energy recently against K-pop stans and what that really means for us as a culture. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to just start with a very bold statement. K-pop has always been coded as queer. K-pop has been for the girls and the gays. And y'all got to remember, before you argue with me, think about this. A lot of the fan service that these groups participate in is queer baiting. It's like the definition of queer baiting to me. And I also think too, in the American context, when we see K-pop stars doing what they do, like the idols will be hugged up on each other, the way that the men are kind of more metrosexual. I think for us as Westerners, because we're so used to hyper masculinity, when we see K-pop idols that are males, we immediately feminize them and associate them with gay people. We associate them as being gay or undercover gay or whatever else. And now granted, even some of the K-pop fans have been guilty of shipping people together. They'll ship different idols together within the same group and write really smutty fan fiction about them. So even we're guilty of this, but I think generally speaking, I've always found it interesting that in the Western context, we see K-pop as coded as queer. And I think that might be this is going to ruffle some feathers, but I do think that might be part of the Black community's disdain for K-pop is the fact that we can't relate to it. Think about it. Just before you get mad, think about it. Process the information. A lot of the stuff that the Black community promotes tends to promote a lot of masculinity in a traditional sense. So when we look at rappers and musicians that women lust over in the Black community, it tends to be men who present as very masculine. When we think about Black men, we think about hyper masculinity, even toxic masculinity. And rap culture has become synonymous with toxic masculinity, unfortunately. So when we see men of other races, they seem to have a lot more range of expression. So a Black woman who likes trap music and Pop Smoke may also enjoy Harry Styles, but they enjoy them for different reasons. So Harry Styles, since he's not Black, he's given a lot more range of expression. And so he's allowed to be queer and to still maintain his masculinity. He just maybe enhances it and does different things with it. He can embrace his feminine and masculine without having to give up either one. And women enjoy him for that. I don't know if Black men enjoy that same luxury. And so I think that part of this phenomenon is the reason why the Black community does not resonate with K-pop. It's not just because of the exploitation. I think it's generally because whenever something appeals to Black women's femininity and their sensibilities, it's automatically written off as being lesser than. And I don't think that a lot of Black men who are not queer can relate to or see themselves reflected in K-pop. So they don't understand it. It doesn't resonate with them. It doesn't matter how good the dancers are, how good the singers are, how hard they train, or how hard they work. It doesn't matter that they're influenced by Black artists. Not always appropriate, but some appreciate and do it respectfully. And it's still not going to be enough because K-pop is coded as queer. And in a culture that's kind of rooted in toxic masculinity, I don't see a situation where the majority of Black men would really enjoy this, despite the fact that there's something to be gained from it. You know what I'm saying? So, controversial opinion, but I think it's something to think about. And I also want to say, I always find it interesting when we talk about misogyny in the Black community, because I don't think people understand how deep this stuff goes. And I think that because K-pop is coded as queer, there seems to be a lack of respect for it and a lack of respect for Black women who enjoy it. I really am starting to realize with every year that passes, Black women are not allowed to enjoy things. We're just not. If we enjoy it, if we get pleasure from it, there has to be 1,000,001 hot takes about it to discourage us from doing it, because it's not centering around Black male affection or attention. It's not centering around pro-Blackness and Black identity. And I find that to be problematic, because the rest of the world is able to participate in things that are not necessarily their culture and not be deemed as heretical or a traitor for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're an artist or a creative, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As creatives, we take so much inspiration from all these different cultures and ideas and concepts. So for someone to suddenly say, no, you're anti-Black if you're inspired by this, you're anti-Black if you enjoy this, then it feels very limiting as a creative. And I'm not sure why no one's saying this, but I find it to be very problematic. A lot of Black women are creative and they're visually stimulated. A lot of us do enjoy the visuals, the outfits and the fashion and the makeup and the music videos, right? We enjoy that aspect and we're thrilled about it. The fun in K-pop is the camp of it all. So it's very interesting to see people automatically write it off as universally one thing and one thing only. And this is not to defend the anti-Blackness or anything, but I find it interesting how, despite the fact that Black women are some of the most vocal about anti-Blackness, some of the most vocal about, protecting and gatekeeping Black culture, it's interesting how suddenly we are the ones betraying the community for just liking something. And if you don't believe me, consider that anime is just as problematic, but maybe in a different way, because anime's roots are deep within misogyny, and it's also coded as male. In a weird way, people act like Black women or women in general can't enjoy anime in the same way that men can. I think it's part of the fact that there's a lot of misogynistic elements of anime, maybe even pedophilic elements of anime. And so if you're a woman, people try to gatekeep anime from you and say that you're not a real fan, you're not a real supporter, you don't really like anime, you're just doing it for attention. It's misogyny. And I think that the fact that there's not a lot of attention geared towards anime, despite it being incredibly problematic, but there's a lot of attention to K-pop, to me shows that maybe there's more going on here than just anti-Blackness. I think anti-Blackness is present in a lot of cultures, but it seems to be the case that whenever Black women and gays enjoy something, suddenly we are the ones that are the weakest links and we just have to be held accountable for it, despite the fact that we're not even the ones doing it and we don't really have as much control as you would think. But let me take it a step further, right? Because let's just say that you're listening to what I'm saying and you're saying, well, Faith, it doesn't matter. There's so much anti-Blackness. How could you like that? How could you do da-da-da? How could you? You're just putting money in their pockets. Listen, K-pop would not be what it is today without its Black fans. And I find it disrespectful in a way that, Black Twitter and all these Black folks with their hot takes aren't considering that the earlier versions of K-pop in the West, their fan bases were a lot of times Black people. And when you go back into second gen K-pop, we're talking about SHINee, TVXQ, in that group, Super Junior, what have you, y'all do understand that Black women were the ones holding these people accountable. The blogs and the YouTube videos that we used to do, that was part of the culture. Not a lot of people liked K-pop 5 to 7 years ago. So, in a way, we all rallied around each other and had small friend groups and support groups for each other. We had small internet communities where we did hold people accountable. That's what I find so egregious about this conversation, what I find so disrespectful. You're disrespecting the work of many Black women and amateur journalists who are covering these subjects and talking about anti-Blackness. How would Black Twitter even know about a rapper named G-Dragon if there was not a Black K-pop stan who called him out for anti-Blackness and for racism? Some of these topics have been covered extensively for years. But when y'all got a hold of it because BTS became popular in the United States, it seems as if y'all just took that and ran with it and did not consider all the work that had been done beforehand. A lot of times, Black K-pop stans are the most woke. We are the most progressive. We are the ones holding artists accountable. I'm not sure why or where this narrative is coming from that Black K-pop fans just let everything slide. Maybe it's these new fans. I don't know. Maybe it's the new fans. But as far as I know, all of the Black women I became friends with in college watched K-pop and watched anime and participated in these extracurricular activities. They liked to cosplay, but we were also very Black. And we were not letting people get away with anti-Blackness just because Opa didn't mean it. That's not fair to us. In fact, a lot of Black female K-pop stans and black men who were gay, we were the most vocal. And we would go back and forth with these artists on Instagram and Twitter all the time. So we are overlooking part of K-pop's formation and part of the way it developed and marketed to the West by ignoring Black fans, specifically Black women and gay Black men. Like, we're ignoring them to make these statements. And I don't like that. I don't. It feels very misogynistic to overlook our efforts to hold these artists accountable just because you don't like these little Asian boys dancing. That bothers me. We can have two conversations at the same time. We can say that K-pop has anti-Black roots and these artists today are not really giving. They're just giving appropriation. They're not giving appreciation. And it feels disrespectful. That conversation can be had without dragging Black women and gay Black men by saying that we didn't do enough to stop it and that we are endorsing it or enabling it. When that's not the case, the truth is far more complicated than that. And what you will also find, which I have no data to support this, but I do believe it to be true. I think a lot of Black K-pop stans like myself, what made us distance ourselves from K-pop was the fact that second gen was different. Third gen was different. The K-pop that we're seeing right now is just so beyond westernized that it's very hard to find the Korean pop elements. We liked K-pop because it was a good merge of Western culture and Korean culture. And so it was an entry point into Korean and Asian culture to learn the language and learn the customs and the people. As very open-minded Black folks, we were more than interested in being guests in their culture. Now, don't get me wrong. There was some bullshit going on. Like, there was a lot of things that Black people were doing and saying at the time that was maybe fetishistic of Asian culture. Agreed. And maybe that's a different video. But a lot of us use it as an entry point to learn about the culture. And we were accepted. Like, I can't speak for everyone, but the Korean friends I met in real life were more than willing to, show me their culture and show me their language and help me learn more because I showed a genuine interest. And they have been incredibly respectful. Those interactions were overwhelmingly positive. So I can't speak for everyone, but that was my experience in America. When, Korean immigrants came over, they were incredibly respectful to me. And I made friends because of this, because of my hobbies and because of my sincere interest. I think a lot of Black women would say the same thing, but that is not every Korean American. You know what I'm saying? And so generally, I think that when we have these conversations about, how all of this got started, I think we need to be fair. We need to be fair to the fans. There are plenty of us who were involved and who liked the industry. And granted, we had some issues, right? It was stressful sometimes, holding these artists accountable and doing these call outs and being in these spaces. But ultimately, we still enjoyed it overall because it did feel unique. We did build communities around it. We had our own lingo. We had our own jokes. It was a good time. We had all the memes and we all followed some of the same YouTubers before they got big. But now what I'm noticing, and a lot of older, OG stans have noticed, is that K-pop has lost its unique touch. They're catering to the West, and by catering to the West, they're just straight up appropriating and copying things that have already been done before. And it's so egregious, and it's just like literally copy paste to the point where you can't even pretend that it's anything but. And I like I said, I can't speak for everyone, but I think that's the bigger issue all around is that K-pop has lost its flair. It's lost what made it special because everyone's rushing over to the Americas to be like BTS. And I don't know. I don't think that's what any of us wanted. I think we wanted, Asian culture to remain uniquely Asian and to be their own thing. We respected it for that. But now it's just becoming a race to see who can rap like a rap artist in America, who can, use these trap beats that have been overdone. And a lot of times it's not even good. So yeah, some of us have maintained our distance because the appropriation is just so blatant and just so like, they're not even trying to be unique at this point, that a lot of us have subconsciously stepped away from it, not necessarily intentionally. I'm going to be honest. I don't think I've intentionally walked away from K-pop, but I think looking back, I did subconsciously put some distance between myself and K-pop because the newer groups today, a lot of them don't seem to be giving what the older groups used to. The originality, the flair, the creativity, the camp just isn't there anymore. And it's no longer fun. Doesn't mean that there still aren't groups that are interesting, and I'm sure there are. But right now, I'm just disappointed. Things have changed. The globalization of K-pop has finally happened. The Hallyu wave is here. And it's just not what I thought it was going to be. It's actually really disappointing. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts on the situation. So as a quick recap, yes, anti-Blackness in K-pop exists. But I really would wish that you guys would stop saying that K-pop stans are the weakest links, because you're overlooking all the work that early K-pop stans did to hold these artists accountable. There were blog posts and YouTube videos about these people before you even got the little hot takes on Black Twitter. So show us some respect. God damn it. Show us respect. And stop crapping on us because you don't like Black women and gay Black men. Just because we like something doesn't make it inherently problematic. And even if it is, we can still do two things at the same time. We can still say that something is problematic and that we don't agree, but still hold people accountable. I don't like, being limited to my creativity, limiting my creativity because of pro-Blackness. You know what I'm saying? I watch and learn from all cultures because it genuinely interests me. I'm a citizen of the global society. So telling me that I can only enjoy something if it comes from Black culture just feels incredibly disrespectful. And as a creative, I can't agree with it. And it's not realistic. If we have a bunch of Black artists who are influenced by Asian culture, like, guys, it doesn't make sense for us to limit ourselves to only Black artists because they too are influenced by the same Asian cultures that you're saying only appropriate Black culture. The reality is far more complex than we're making it seem. So all I ask is that we have a bit more nuance and understand that two things can be true at once. Something can be problematic and something could potentially be harmful, but we can also enjoy it and appreciate it depending on what it is. We can set those boundaries. So maybe that doesn't mean every K-pop artist is someone you'll enjoy, but maybe there's a few who are. K-pop is a big genre filled with things that are not necessarily pop music that you can enjoy, that maybe you don't have to feel bad about listening to. That reality exists. And I think we should accept that and let it stand for what it is. I don't appreciate the misogyny, the coded misogyny in this conversation. And that's all I have to say about this subject. So if you like what I had to say, sound off down below. If you don't like what I had to say, also sound off below. How do you feel about K-pop? Do you think there's a point? Maybe some of the conversations we're having about K-pop stans being the weakest links is actually a little bit of misogyny? Let me know in the comment section below. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.